In 1985, DC Comics released Crisis on Infinite Earths, a 12-issue crossover limited series. The title's intended purpose was to reset the DC universe, bringing everything into one main continuity. It was a bold business and creative move, one that would change the landscape of media forever. But at the same time, Marv Wolfman and George Perez were just cleaning house, featuring as many heroes as possible, while throwing in some curveballs that would ultimately change the tone of late 80s comics. In the wake of this series, many comics took on a darker, complex, more deconstructed tone. Writers were more confident in what they could do with heroes, and definitive story arcs were common for this era. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, published in 1986 by writer Alan Moore and penciled by classic Superman artist Curt Swan, tells a poignant and nostalgic story as a farewell to the Silver Age Superman. Moore, at that time known for his literal deconstruction of long-established comic book tropes, embraced a different angle to his writing this time out. On Swamp Thing, Moore restructured the hero's rich history and motives with said deconstructive approach. But on Action Comics and Superman, he explores the consequences of the Man of Steel's existence on those around him. Superman's humanity is also thoroughly explored. How he views an impending battle that he may not be able to handle, loss of friends, and his former and current love interest. By playing into Superman's strengths, almost fully foregoing the POV of Clark Kent, and embracing the truth, justice, and hope that the character has always stood for, Moore crafts a stunning farewell story that makes for a definitive read, or, unironically, a great starting point for Superman. We open 10 years after Superman has last been seen on Earth. Lois Lane, retired from the Daily Bugle and married with a family, narrates her final days with Superman to an upstart reporter. She remembers Bizarro suddenly attacking Metropolis in a ruthless assault that is very unlike anything he's done in the past. Before Superman can stop Bizarro, he notices blue kryptonite within his possession. Slowly, this kills Bizarro in what seems to be a suicide with questionable motives. The insanity quickly ramps up when villains from Superman's past start attacking him in droves, committing crimes far more violent than they've ever attempted. Within the madness, Clark Kent is revealed to the public as the human identity of Superman. Retreating back to his fortress to collect himself, he's visited by the Legion of Heroes, who have a message for him. At this point in the comic, Moore's writing really starts to shine. His understanding and execution of Superman is done perfectly. Clark's cousin, Supergirl, was one of the big names who was killed during Crisis on Infinite Earths. When he sees her with the Legion, he cracks. Shocked by seeing his loved one, even an alternate timeline version, alive in the future and picking up on the intentions of the Legion's visit, pressure finally brings the great Superman down. He spends the night crying, realizing that his own mortality is looming, with Krypto the Superdog at his side. Characterization plays a pivotal role in this narrative, as Moore explores the emotional toll for a superhero's life. Superman is presented with vulnerability and humanity, challenging the notion of the invincible, godlike hero. Supporting characters like Lois Lane and Lana Lang are given depth, their relationships with Superman serving as emotional anchors throughout the story. Brainiac and Lex Luthor, classic villains, play a pivotal role in this run, and are as deadly as ever, even if the scope of this story starts to get more small scale as we shift over to the Fortress of Solitude. Curt Swan has a strong visual understanding for what Moore intended with his plot. The subject matter and shocking twist are incredibly dark for a Silver Age-inspired story. As such, it reads tight, like a Silver Age story, but shocks like the Bronze Era that it was published in. Additional credit needs to be given to George Perez and Kurt Schaffenberger, who share inking duties across the two issues. Perez's style fits with the times and has a look that could conclude any Silver or Bronze Age run that came before, but Schaffenberger, an old school artist, finishes off the run with his softer aesthetic. The hair is no longer 80s stylish, It's more in line with how Norman fucking Rockwell would portray Superman and the supporting cast. The climax of whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow is a gut-wrenching twist that subverts expectations and leaves a lasting impact. An assortment of villains lays siege on the Fortress of Solitude, including Kryptonite Man and a deceased Lex Luthor that is being necroed by Brainiac. Despite Superman's friends' best efforts to help out, they're unable to penetrate the force field surrounding the fortress, leaving Jimmy Olsen, Lana Lang, and Krypto the Superdog to help defeat and ultimately sacrifice themselves in an attempt to keep Superman alive. Moore's ability to subvert superhero tropes and expectations while respecting the essence of these characters and their long historical ties to Superman makes for an exhilarating read with every single page turn. Superman is forced into an ultimatum that challenges his beliefs and oath and decides to kill himself, knowing that he cannot continue to exist in a world where he can consider murder as an option for defeating foes. This was a great plot point and one that mirrors how comic book writers and artists started to become bigger than the characters they were putting to paper. Self-inserts and shifting ideologies were all the rage in the 80s, but for Moore's Superman, that isn't a world for him. Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is a brilliant synthesis of narrative and visual storytelling that pays homage to Superman's legacy while signaling a transformative shift in the superhero genre. It remains a testament to Moore's prowess as a storyteller and his ability to deconstruct and elevate iconic characters in the comic book medium. For a lot of people, Superman is a boring character. He's overpowered, he's a goody two-shoes, lack of interesting villains, and I'll be honest, I can see the perspective of those who think that, but the thing about Superman is he's a character whose values come from a very different time in the world. People wanted heroes who were always going to win and who were always hopeful. We know now that a character like Superman would never exist. They would have a greater god complex than what we've seen in Clark, and even if modern writers do try to depict Superman as sometimes falling into the negatives of having so much power, ultimately he's a character who is supposed to have hope. He's supposed to believe in truth and justice. He's supposed to be someone who is kind of a goody two-shoes. He is a Boy Scout, but that's a good quality. It's a quality that any good writer can understand and lean into, but still find layers underneath and complexities to Superman. Alan Moore understands that Superman can be, and he has been, defeated before. It's not just about punching him harder than he can punch you. In 2 issues, Alan Moore was able to weave through all of Superman's history and produce a story that stood the test of time. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is essential reading. Alan Moore and Kurt Swan's tandem honors the Man of Steel while reminding the reader that despite the changing landscape of media, Superman will always be a beacon of light and a reminder of how hopeful past comics and the world used to be. A milestone in comic book storytelling, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is a masterpiece.